Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. It is raining today, which it hasn't rained where I live in a very long time. So I think it's nice. It's also appropriate for this video because I'm going to do a little bit of a story time about my journey into womanhood. This video is also going to be pretty candid. It's not going to be scripted or anything because I feel that I can't be scripted all the time and that I actually need to face the music. I need to actually be able to talk in front of the camera at some point. I also think it's important for you guys to see me as I am as well. So as somebody who has been talking about femininity on this channel for quite some time now, as it seems like you guys really enjoy when I do talk about it, I think you guys should know that I didn't feel feminine for most of my life. I definitely didn't feel like a woman for a lot of it too, which those are kind of two separate things in this story. As far as a woman, I didn't feel like a woman until maybe like a year ago. But as far as being feminine, I didn't feel feminine until maybe like 2 or 3 or 4 years ago. So I spent most of my life feeling that I was very masculine. And it was something I really struggled with. And so this video is kind of just going to be me talking about going from feeling very masculine, having a poor self-image, to where I am now, which by no means is the final stage. I am still learning. I talk about it all the time on this channel, that femininity takes time, that femininity is a discipline, that it takes experience and wisdom. And so I am by no means in a late stage. I probably won't fully understand womanhood and femininity until I'm an old, decrepit woman. But I'm in a much better place now as far as acceptance of myself and happy with my progress when it comes to presenting in a feminine way and living a feminine life and partaking in the ritual of being a woman. So I guess I should just start from my youth, from as far back as I guess I can remember. I had felt masculine for a very long time in 2 ways. One was, of course, my body, and 2 was, and more importantly, I should say, was my demeanor, my disposition, my mannerisms, my gestures, the way that I talked. I very much felt masculine. Not that I felt like a dude or anything like that, but I felt that I was very, there was just a lot of masculine energy in me that had no regulation whatsoever. There was not a lot of femininity coming out of me. I presented feminine, I dressed feminine, I enjoyed feminine concepts. I just had no idea how to implement the lifestyle of femininity into my life at all. And it's actually funny because I had one of the best examples of a feminine woman in my life, my mother. And I think it's a general rule that you can probably draw everything back to your childhood, your relationship with your parents and your family. And my mother was a great example of a very feminine woman. My mother, I adored her. I loved her appearance. I loved that she was fashionable. She always knew how to take care of herself, how to maintain herself. When it came to handling certain situations, she always did it with a kind of grace and in a calm that I could almost never understand. And when it came to appearances, I respected my mother so much. But any time that my mother ever explained to me that being feminine took a lot of discipline and ritualism and taking time for yourself, and it was a little bit, arduous or tedious, that was when I completely shut off, and I didn't care to take any value in that. I was very much lazy in more ways than one whenever I was young. It became very apparent as I grew older that when it came to femininity, I liked to take things at face value. I loved to see the way that women looked, and I loved presenting feminine and everything, but I didn't want to actually do the work that was involved in being feminine. And it wasn't until I grew a little bit older, I started actually taking an active interest in femininity and learning about it, the history of it, the history of woman, that it became apparent to me that I needed to instill grace. I needed to instill femininity within myself. For someone who talks about femininity as something that comes naturally, I say this all the time. If you do not present this way, if you do not come off as feminine or graceful or anything like that, and you desire to be, then unfortunately it's just something you have to work for. Not everybody can be talented, and not everybody can be graceful and artistic and beautiful with every movement. And so I guess maybe that part pissed me off a little. The answer was there all along. My mother had told me, like, you know, I don't just look like this, present myself like this. I don't just wake up like this. And so it took a long time for me to find value in her telling me to take care of myself. And it took me a long time to find value in the ritual of being a woman. I eventually learned later, and thank God, because I think I was always seeking it out. I think I was going to find this wisdom eventually, but I now consider femininity and all of the tedious work that goes into it, I see it as an art form. I don't see it as a chore anymore like I did whenever I was younger. I see my laziness as a roadblock on my way to femininity. And so I did not take the discipline, the ritual of being a woman into consideration. I took femininity and womanhood at face value for damn near a decade of my life or more, 15 years or so. It's no wonder that my progress towards femininity was stifled because I didn't want to put in the work. And I've talked about this idea of like instilling grace in videos months ago. This idea that if you are not naturally born with grace or beauty, or for me, femininity, you have to force your body into submission so that these things become second nature. I was like almost like a feral girl. Like I just didn't know, I didn't understand the art of being feminine. And a lot of art is discipline. This kind of idea of like instilling grace just is kind of inscribed on this story for me. But I would just look at my body in the mirror for years and years and just be so unsatisfied. I would, turn and I was like, I had an athletic build for a very long time. I was not voluptuous. I did not have like a curvaceous, even somewhat curvaceous figure until I got much older. So I'm looking at like a somewhat, to me, masculine body, aside from obviously genitals. And then in addition to that, which probably bothered me more, was my very masculine disposition, my gestures, my mannerisms. I was very heavy-handed. I was not graceful. I was very skittish. And so I'm seeing all of these things and I'm wondering to myself, what do I do? I'm just yearning to be a woman. I want to be these feminine women. And as an artist and appreciating the women in art, I wanted to be those women, so graceful and poised, just exuding femininity in every painting. I wanted to be those women so badly, and just, I think subconsciously I was just like, read about it, learn about it. You have to figure out what it is about these women that you love so much. And so that kind of, I guess when I was in college, I guess, that's when I started doing my research more into femininity and what exactly does the divine entail? What does the unknown entail? What does it mean to be feminine, to be a woman? What does that mean in history? What does that mean in art? What is grace? What is discipline? How are they applied to me and in other parts of my life? And so I started doing my research. I started reading books, and once I started learning about true femininity and not like the packaged media version of femininity, or even just the passed down, like, I don't know, for me, European version of what femininity is. Once I started learning the history behind it and just kind of picking what it was that was valuable to me out of the text, that was when I started to actually accept myself and started to not be so harsh on myself. Because one, I learned a very important fact that feminine development is different for everybody. And we are expecting ourselves to be feminine way too early. Looking back on it now, I can understand that for me, I'm feeling like a woman at probably the right time now. I'm only 24, and especially as like a late bloomer, in my opinion, I think my body finally became more feminine, maybe like 2 or 3 years ago. You just have to, it takes time. You have to come into your body. You have to become comfortable with yourself. And this can be developed with a partner too. Becoming comfortable sexually with another person is very important for femininity too. So I learned that femininity takes time and that you shouldn't force it or feel bad about how long your journey is taking. So there's that. I also learned that femininity doesn't have one body type. It doesn't have one specific ideal of beauty. I learned, I think the one that stood out the most was the Amazonian woman archetype, which made me feel a lot better about myself, because the Amazonian women were wild women. They were muscular. They, in some cases, they would actually amputate their breasts, which I thought was wild. They were associated with strength and wisdom in the hunt. And it was almost like a very masculine version. I was like, wow, I can really identify with that. And I thought like, wow, there's a different side to femininity that I had never heard about that isn't so supple and kind and soft all the time and dainty and graceful. Like there's a femininity that's a warrior too, or huntress, I guess you could say. Learning about different archetypes of women, the just very large threshold of behaviors in women that are completely normal and have been studied and witnessed throughout history, that women are not, like, as with anything, you can't put anything in a box, you can't simplify anything, especially womanhood and femininity. But like in this threshold, there is rage, there is anger, there is chaos, there is the unknown. Like these things are all associated with femininity, but I don't hear anybody, or have never heard anybody really in my younger years talking about that. So no wonder I felt so alienated from femininity, because I didn't know the history of it. I only knew one probably very one-sided, one-dimensional version of it. And especially like when I started reading about kind of like the mercilessness of Mother Nature too, that's where I thought to myself, not that I fit in here, but like this coldness, this kind of uncanny nature to women. I found that very empowering, because it meant that I didn't have to be kind. It meant that I didn't have to be soft and caring. It meant that my femininity could fluctuate. Ever since I did this research, ever since I looked into femininity and the history of it, I have never felt more at peace with myself, and I have never felt more on track to becoming a woman. And like I said, I'm not there yet, and part of my discipline and part of what I have learned is that it'll take time, and that there's no point in forcing it at all. You have to let it come to you. There's that passivity, that receptivity there. You have to wait for the right time for you to bloom, and you'll know when you know. It's listening to yourself too. It's intuition. And that waiting too also manifested in waiting for my body to develop on its own. So now as a woman, I'm kind of just learning to let go, while also, maintaining that discipline, that healthy balance between restriction and letting go. I'm understanding, what it is to take care of myself and to hold myself in high regard, and to devote time to myself, to honor myself. So at this stage of my life, looking back on everything, seeing how I was as a child, that kind of like self-loathing and not understanding, the masculine parts of myself, and seeing how that progressed, seeing the kind of little hints here and there of like what I should do, but ignoring them for some time, and then later realizing what it was going to take for me to get what I wanted out of myself. I came to the point now where I'm at a moment of clarity, and also knowing that I don't have a control necessarily all the time on what happens or how things will play out. I'm understanding that with my femininity, and everyone's different, I realize that it's a balance between rigidity and ease and letting go. And at times, rigidity for me is needed to learn how to let go, through that whole second nature thing, through disciplining the body to the point where certain things become second nature. I am not one of those people that is born with the natural grace of femininity. So I have to teach myself how to be like that. And then at some point, after the discipline and all of the work has paid off, these things start coming naturally. And I can see that already. It just takes working on yourself, really. But yeah, there was so many years where I just didn't feel right in my body. I didn't really know how to deal with it, and I was lazy when it came to trying to fix it and trying to work on it. Yeah, that's my story for you all. The point of me telling this is so that you guys will go in the comments and you guys will tell me about your journey too. Because let's be honest, there's nothing better than knowing someone else is out there that feels exactly like you do. There's nothing worse than feeling completely alone where it's not needed, I guess. Well, that's the end of this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Like I said, please leave comments. Let me know what you guys have faced in your life when it comes to femininity. Please leave a like. Please subscribe as always. And I will see you guys next week.